but someone knows something, yet everyone plays ball. I say we round them all up, let's brain fingerprint them all.
Hello everybody, how are you today? You are tuned in to Irkoze on Making a Murderer on YouTube. I go over Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey's cases. I also go over other cases as time goes by. I go over the documents, the pictures, videos, anything really case related for that matter. And I have many other videos that you can check out, just like the one you're about to see. Alright, hello there everybody. Today we're here to talk a little bit more about Brendan. The reason why I'm talking about Brendan is I was watching the awards ceremony for the Justice Award that was given to Kathleen Zellner recently. Some of you may have been watching. It's very, very interesting. But I kind of, looked at that part where she was talking about Brendan and the A.E.D.P.A. and I thought, that's probably a good bit to make sure people, to share with people, make sure they understand. The whole A.E.D.P.A. thing is, difficult for those people like me and many of us a long time, 2 years ago or whatever, didn't know what it was. But now that we've gone through the process of what Brendan went through on his, when he was trying to get his habeas relief, when he won, basically, he filed for habeas relief with the federal district court and was granted an 81-page decision by Duffin, and then it was appealed. So then it went to the 7th Circuit Court. And then a 3-judge panel heard the case, and it went 2-1 in Brendan's favor. So he won again. He won twice, right? And then the state did what I have been calling basically filing a Hail Mary, filing for an en-banc review, which is basically like a Hail Mary. Okay? Here's why. It is easier to get a case in front of the Supreme Court of the United States than it is to get an en-banc review at a federal circuit court. Yeah, it's hard. So that's what I mean when I say it was a Hail Mary, because Brendan had already won twice. I mean, it was just odd. So he files for it. He gets it. It's granted. The hearing is granted, and then a judge steps down right at that moment for whatever reasons, and then suddenly the decision goes 4-3 against Brendan, and that's it. He files for a writ of certiorari with the Supreme Court of the United States. They declined to hear the case. So I thought it would be interesting to have everybody listen to what Kathleen Zellner says about A.E.D.P.A. here and stuff like that, because I mean, A.E.D.P.A. is like a well-meaning thing, really, in that it probably just needs to be augmented or adjusted or just amended, because it's well-meaning, like Denny. You guys have heard me say about Denny that, if the prosecution's putting forward it's a crime without motive, then it shouldn't be required of the defense that they have to prove motive for their third-party suspects. Just the way I feel about it. If the prosecution is saying it's a crime without motive, or could be, then I believe that should relieve the defense of that burden as well. If the prosecution is relieving themselves of it, I believe it should relieve the defense of that burden. That's just the way I feel about it. So, but I think Denny's well-meaning. It's meant to stop people from just throwing out anybody as a suspect during their trial and gumming up the whole works of the trial and confusing the jury and things like that. So it's well-meaning in trying to prevent an abundance of, basically just BS in court. So yes, it's well-meaning. Does need to be amended a little bit, maybe? Is it maybe just in certain cases not, it maybe goes a little too far? That's, something that needs to be discussed and worked out, in my opinion. Same with A.E.D.P.A. in a similar way, is it was instated by the United States Senate to limit how much federal courts could intervene at the state level, which makes a lot of sense when you understand how our Constitution's written. It's written for the states to be kind of independent entities of the federal, government itself, and it's supposed to allow states to take care of their own problems. So in that sense, it's well-meaning. But what's happening now is it needs to be amended a little bit, because it's so strict that it's actually preventing federal courts from intervening in cases where we probably need some intervention at this point, because the state courts are not taking seriously, what we're learning from DNA, the Innocence Projects, and all that stuff, they are refusing to acknowledge that data, that what's coming in and what we're learning from those things. And until they're forced to, until the federal courts start making it clear, and the Supreme Court of the United States starts making it clear that juveniles require special care, and from now on that special care will be given, because if they don't, and they'll probably add it as one of the 3 things that can allow a federal court to grant habeas relief under A.E.D.P.A. So it might become a third prong of the way that somebody on habeas relief can potentially get through the AEDPA wall. So anyways, I'll let you guys all hear a little bit from Zellner here and see what she has to say about it, and then we'll come on back one more time.
Those of you that are familiar with the Making a Murder series, there were 2 individuals in that convicted. One was a 16-year-old. Many people worldwide saw the video of his confession. There were multiple ethical violations about that. He knew nothing about the crime. He gave all of these answers that made no sense, and the police basically told him what to say, and they videotaped all of it. You would think that that case would be overturned on that constitutional violation, coercion of a confession. And it was. It was overturned at the federal district court level. Then it was overturned. It was affirmed at the 7th Circuit level. And then it was totally shut down in an en banc hearing about 6 months ago by the entire court. And the U.S. Supreme Court said they would not take the case. So even though there was a global response to seeing this 16-year-old without a parent present, being misled and fed information, having his own attorney basically sell him out, trying to get him to plead guilty, even though everyone could see it, and even though there was some initial success with it, it was ultimately shut down because of this federal statute, the anti-terrorism statute, because the 7th Circuit said, well, the last coerced confession we decided of a juvenile was 50 years ago. And he was held in a room for 3 days, and they beat him up, and there was physical coercion. This Brendan Dassey case only involves psychological manipulation. So you don't have any precedent, so there is no relief. So you have to serve the life sentence that you were given initially. So it's something you want to be aware of as an educated adult, that there are these concepts in the criminal law system that have come to the forefront in trying to stop this wave with the wrongful convictions of when somebody's found to be innocent, even with DNA, that they still attempt to shield the police officers who framed someone or the prosecutors who concealed evidence from any liability. And this has been going on forever. With the Joseph Burroughs case, one of the reasons it was overturned is when we got the prosecutor's file, lo and behold, there is an eyewitness statement that gave Mr. Burroughs an alibi, and that was never turned over to the defense. And the trial judge said to me, he said, I gave Mr. Burroughs the death penalty. He said, partly because I thought we'd get better attorneys in here to reinvestigate it, but I'm the one that's going to undo it. And he said, despite the fact that you got Ms. Potter to admit to the murder on the stand, I would have overturned it on the fact that the prosecutor concealed the alibi witness that would have prevented Mr. Burroughs from serving 6 years on death row. And so I began to experience what would happen with prosecutors in terms of withholding evidence. It is done routinely. It is a widespread practice, and they have absolute immunity for doing that. And it's astounding to me when I talk to people in the public that they just had no idea. I mean, can you imagine if you went to work every day and there is no accountability for what you do? And by that, I mean, you're not just insulated from negligence. Prosecutors are insulated from suborning perjury. They are insulated from any type of fraudulent conduct. So they are insulated from committing crimes. Who else gets to do that in our society? So despite the fact that we know because of DNA, so with DNA, we now know that 1/3 of the people who were exonerated by DNA, they falsely confessed.
So, you know, she was absolutely right about the international support. There's a ton of it. There's going to be more signs appearing on the wall behind me very soon. We've got the Dutch or the Netherlands support, headed up in a big way by Georgina Stulen-Bose. We've got Scotland. Some of you may know Mr. Capaldi, who's in some of my videos. There's Australia, and there we have Mr. Hodnott, Mr. Muldoon, and a few others down there in Australia. Just lots of people all over the world who have a very, very vested interest in what happens to Brendan and Stephen. You know, so it's worldwide, and like I said, there's going to be also Irish. There's going to be a poster for the Irish, that was used for the rally they had in Ireland the year in 2016 after the documentary came out. So I'm gonna have a poster of that. You can see the Scottish flag up there right now, and so there's gonna be some things up there to show how many people all over the world and how many countries there are people watching and paying attention to what happens here. And so, like I said, I wanted to point that out for everybody, because AEDPA is right now, it's like a wall that's preventing the federal courts from kind of reigning, to kind of, I don't know, to bring kind of some sanity to the state courts, because they are just not wanting to acknowledge what DNA and what the Innocence Projects are teaching us, and the stats that are coming out, showing that we are wrongfully convicting a lot of people. And it's, when you look at those cases, there's just earmarks all over that you don't even need to do a DNA test most of the time. If you see the certain earmarks of investigators acting a certain way or prosecutors acting a certain way, or whatever, you can pretty much bet if you dig, you're going to find some dirt. So that's what's happening. But the state courts are, they don't want to have anything to do with it. Because why? Because if they start accepting it, it opens the floodgates for wrongfully convicted, and then they have to try to figure out how to pay all these wrongfully convicted men who win their freedom. And that's why they'd rather hold out for Alfred pleas. The longer they wait, the better chance that the evidence in these men's cases will get destroyed, and they will no longer be a problem. I mean, it's disturbing, when you think about it, because a lot of evidence does get destroyed when men who are claiming they're innocent are trying to get their evidence retested. They end up getting stalled for so long that by the time that it gets okayed for them to get the evidence tested, it turns out that the police station or whatever Department of Justice it was being held at, or wherever it was, and whatever evidence locker got remodeled, and everything got destroyed, and so that they could remodel their evidence room. And that's basically, it happens in ways like that evidence gets destroyed and guys get left sitting in jail. That's the real problem right now. The states are worried because if they start moving into the future, then there's going to be a lot of people that were wrongfully convicted that are going to be obviously angry that they were wrongfully convicted, and they're going to want compensation, and the states don't want to have to deal with that. So it's going to be this kind of tooth and nail fight, really. I mean, we need to get on our congressmen about, augmenting AEDPA to have some kind of way for juveniles, and especially mentally limited ones, to be able to get through that wall, for there to be a way for federal judges to help, especially in those cases. Because if the state courts are going to ignore what's going on with adults, Well, you know what? Maybe the injustice that's going on with the juveniles, especially the mentally limited ones, will get people's ire up enough and get them angry enough that they will demand real change and allow at least some way, a path for kids like Brendan and other kids, juveniles, who were, you know, treated as Brendan was, or similarly to him. As I have other videos on my channel, you can see of other very similar cases to Brendan's, that where, you know, it took almost, you know, between 10 and 15 years for that kid to eventually win their freedom after they were wrongfully convicted. I mean, one that really stands out to me is Devontae Sanford. I mean, that kid, the DA knew 8 days after she convicted him, she knew for sure who had done it, and it wasn't that kid, and she let him rot for 15 years. In fact, they had to go around her to get him out. They had to actually go to the Michigan's Department of Justice and to the Attorney General himself and provide all the proof of what they had found about this hitman and all this everything, and it took that to get Devontae Sanford out, because Kim Worthy, the DA that prosecuted it, refused, and still to this day claims that Devontae Sanford did it, even though the hitman admitted to it, told them where to find the weapon that matched the ballistics, and told them Devontae Sanford had absolutely nothing to do with it. And I mean, just on and on and on. And so, I mean, there's just these cases out there, folks. It's happening. And the state courts want to ignore it, and they don't want the federal courts to be able to call them on it. And at least with juveniles and mentally limited juveniles, we need to get on our lawmakers about creating a path for federal judges to be able to help them. Because that is the main reason why the majority judges at the on-bank, that is the main reason why they said that they were basically denying it, because of A.E.D.P.A. You know, I mean, even though one thing of A.E.D.P.A, to be able to overcome A.E.D.P.A was if there is an unreasonable finding of fact. Well, it's funny to me because the on-bank majority themselves used an unreasonable fact that was a fact that was found by the lower court, and that was that the control question with Brendan, it was that the control question proved that Brendan was resisting officers. It was absolutely the opposite. It was absolutely, you'll notice the shirt I'm wearing here, folks. So this one here, that's what I'm talking about. They ask him about, they make up a fact. They say that Teresa had a tattoo on her stomach, which she did not have. And they tell him that she did, or you know, they tell him that she did, and does he remember? And he says, okay, that's what they wanted. He's not just giving in to whatever they say and everything. But then Tom Fassbender says, do you disagree with me when I say that? And of course, Brendan, after all the psychological conditioning over the course of the interrogation so far, is obviously afraid to be in disagreement with the investigators and immediately goes, no, but I just don't know what it was. When he says no, he's asked if he disagrees, and then he says no. That means he agrees. That means he agrees to a fake fact, right? He just agreed to a fake fact. This proves that he is malleable, and that he is suggestible, and that he is willing to say anything that he thinks that the investigators want to hear, and he is afraid to be in disagreement with them. That's what it proves. So the on-bank majority offered this fact, which they should have found unreasonable. They offered it as support of their decision of denying Brendan Dassey his habeas relief. So these are interesting things that are going on with this right now. We're all, you know, we're following this. You know, so many people out there that care deeply about this, and hopefully we'll pick up some more after MAM2 comes out on October 19th. So that's about it for this one, folks. We'll see ya. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe.